Hey there, Safecrackers! Get your combinations ready because it is time for the Comic Vault! A vault full of comics ready for you to be, have reviewed to you. Anyway, we get to experience it vicariously through Geekvolution! Yay! I'm revisiting Wanted. I felt that I had enough people who thought I should continue reading that I decided to go ahead and give it a shot. For some of you, you might remember that I reviewed issue 1 and decided that Millar is a professional, but that he wrote a story that was not for me. So I decided that I was going to review issue 1, but then call it good, assuming that the story went somewhere and went somewhere, well constructed. Now, I've read the entire thing from back to front, all 6 issues. There are some interesting themes in here, and Boo Rat, yes, I have heard your claims, and I do agree with you. Let me get to... I feel like there's some themes that never necessarily get fully addressed, but there are some things that are definitely present throughout the entire story. Like, we have this gritty world, and essentially what he's saying is, this world is extremely gritty. And this world is extremely full of horrible things happening, and people living unsatisfactory lives. They're dissatisfied with their lives. And what that essentially means is, in this book, where, okay, for those of you who don't know, this book is about supervillains who have essentially killed off all of the heroes or erased their memories and turned them into, and then faded in the background and become the silent rulers of the planet. So they have divided up the continents and now they control the world. So this is a world in which villains have won, and I feel like Millar is trying to parallel our world with this, saying that we live in a world where the villains have won, the villains are in control. Now, what does that actually say about the characters within it? And since the protagonist decides to become a villain, since the protagonist does things that are morally reprehensible, they are not something that you could really consider to be morally straight. This is an evil man. We have a book full of bad people. 100%. So, I have just a couple thoughts here. I'm going to read off. You can't entirely avoid conflict because if you do that, we become weak. The main character starts off as a man who was raised pacifist, so therefore people take advantage of him. If you are not willing to stand up for yourself, nobody else will. And if you are not willing to become an aggressor or a victimizer, you will become a victim. So it's not even just about standing up for yourself. It's about being cruel to other people, intentionally. Because they'll be cruel to you, because the assumption is that it's not just you doing criminal act, it's not just people enacting cruelty upon you, you will have that happen to you unless you enact cruelty upon others. That's essentially where I'm coming from here. There is a little bit of anti-capitalism, anti-establishment themes in here where because villains are in charge, you can't trust them, so essentially you have to do your own thing. I think that one thing that Millar is really touching upon here is that I'm not sure about this, but I think he thinks, or at least he's saying in this book, that the common man, the common person, harbors sick rage. Or rather, they're sick with rage about how much of their life they can't control, and therefore they will exert certain amounts of control upon other people. They will satisfy desires strictly because that is the only thing that they can do that will make their lives happier. They can't control their lives, so they satisfy desires. We find out in the first issue that this guy, our main character, Wesley Gibson, who is essentially not satisfying any of his desires, is completely miserable and completely neutered. And he has no ability to stand up for himself or victimize other people as people are victimizing him. So he has a girlfriend, but that girlfriend is sleeping with his best friend. So the best friend and the girlfriend are satisfying a desire. She wants something that she's not getting from her boyfriend, Wesley Gibson. So she's deciding that it doesn't matter what his feelings about it are. She's just going to satisfy the desire. Same thing with the best friend. Of course, why should he care about his best friend? He has a desire that he wants to satisfy. And when it comes down to the boss, or Wesley's boss at work, he has a power trip that he's going on. So it's not just that villains control the world, it's that villainy exists essentially in the heart of every man. And that's why when I say that it's not just about standing up for yourself, it's about being criminal. That's what this book is really about. Either that, or it's about people getting shot, and it's about watching bad things happen to people. That's the only other thing it can really be about. Boo Rat said something that I think is totally true, and I really enjoyed his comment on my last video about this, or about the first issue anyway. Boo Rat said that there is a nature versus nurture argument. And yes, there is. There very much so is. So, good job, Boo Rat. So, the mother raised him to be pacifist. Wesley's mother raised him to be pacifist. But Wesley's father, and you find this out in the first issue, Wesley's father is a villain. And when he dies, he inherits the estate. When Wesley's father dies, Wesley Gibson inherits the estate of his formerly villainous father. So, he is pulled into what is known as the Fraternity, and since he's pulled into the Fraternity, he essentially gets his father's place in the Fraternity. The Fraternity is what they call this secret league of villains that are controlling the world. And he takes to it like a fish in water. He becomes a villain very quickly. Now, his life is very dissatisfactory. And his mother is sort of characterized as a half-wit for even making him a pacifist, which also supports the idea that cruelty is a way of life, or the only sensible way of life within this wanted universe. I don't agree with that as applied to regular life, but anyway. So he's birthed by a villain, he becomes a villain, he's very good at being a villain, and he enjoys being a villain. Now when I say being a villain, I don't just mean robbing banks. I mean, this is a guy who in his spare time goes and rapes and kills people just for the fun of it. He'll go slaughter loads and loads of people. He starts by killing people that he doesn't like, people that he feels have slighted him in some way. He kills a lot of people he runs into in the first issue. Moving on. Then he moves on to killing people that he doesn't know, just for thrill kills. The world is his oyster, and he's killing people just to stave off, or just to exert his power on others. I find that to be unsympathetic. I don't like that. But anyway, I'll get to that in a minute. So there's an obvious nature argument here, because he really takes to it. It's not just that he's not a pacifist anymore, it's that he enjoys being, well, a sadist. So his mother raises him pacifist, and then these people train him to be a villain, and he really takes to it and likes it. Would he like it as much as he does if he hasn't spent his entire life being a pacifist? Maybe one extreme leads to the other. Maybe completely removing all power from your life will make you greedy for too much power. So maybe there is a little bit of a nurture argument in here by saying that since his mother made him into this neutered creature, he is more apt to become, because he has this natural killing ability. That's what they call him. He's the killer, which I think is kind of lazy in coming up with superpowers, but that's what his power is. He's a killer. Okay? Super reflexes. Why is he good at being a killer? We don't know. He's just a good killer. That bothers me. Everybody else has either really strange powers or really interesting powers, and he has the ability to kill. It's just trying to add more grittiness to the world. So, because he takes to it so strongly, maybe it's not that he has a natural inclination to do it. He has a natural ability to do it, but he has a natural inclination to do it. Maybe it's not nature. Maybe since his mother made him into this thing, maybe that's what's making him like it so much. He's gone from one extreme to the other because he hated that extreme. Now he finds the next and finds that preferable. Why? Because now he has some ability to control his own destiny now. So, moving on, I can see how Wesley Gibson is relatable. He is a relatable guy. You can see why nobody has gone through life without getting angry at another person. Nobody has gone through life without feeling like a victim or without feeling powerless. That being said, relatable is not the same thing as sympathetic. Wesley Gibson is entirely unsympathetic because there is no choice that he makes within this book that you can 100% agree with. Now, some of the praise that I've heard for this book is that it's a thrill ride, that it's supposed to be fun, non-stop action, colorful characters. These are the things you say about something that is not character-driven. These are the things you say about something that you can't sympathize with the main character. If you like to see bad things happen from bad people to bad people, this is the book for you. But essentially, the guy makes no choices that you can morally agree with. Now, there are some moments of morality dipping into his life, and that's the only reason that I can say that this would be a nurture argument, is because there are a couple moments where, one, he doubts himself. He's like, wow, why? I can't kill all these people. This is awful. Maybe I should stop. Maybe, how did I get myself into this situation? I can't be a killer. I'm not good enough to be a killer. And then he kills everybody. So there is a moment in this where he has, and this never comes back within the story at all. It happens right in the middle and it's gone. He goes into a police station. I'm totally going to ruin this scene for you. He goes into a police station and starts killing everybody. Obviously, here's some anti-establishment themes for you. He's just killing all the police officers. And he runs into one, has some sort of sympathetic breakdown. Well, let me rephrase that. Maybe it's not sympathetic. He has some sort of attack of morality, like it's just a little hiccup in his life. And he lets this one police officer live because he essentially finds her to be pathetic, and he can't bring himself to kill somebody. Now that he's killed all these other people, he refuses to kill her. So he leaves. And he's talking to the Fox about it, and what Fox has to say is that you're just getting used to your new life. You've hit a wall. Everybody hits this wall. They all start questioning it. Eventually you'll realize that this is the only way to be. And then Wesley says, okay, and they leave it at that. Why even put it in there? Why? Because obviously this isn't a major concern. The only thing that I can think of is maybe he's trying to give credence to the nurture argument, but that's weird because it's so obviously a nature argument that it just bothers me that he would even toss that in there. It's taking up pages. It's like he needed to have something to fill 3 or 4 pages and he shoves it in there. It's not organic within the story, and it leads to nothing. So why set something up that you're not going to bring back? This story is the antithesis of plot-driven. This is completely plot-driven. This is the antithesis of character-driven. Now, something that's plot-driven, character-driven is a character is making choices that affects his own destiny. The character is proactively making choices. This is about Wesley Gibson, who is given a pot of gold and said, here, you have these abilities, come join us and we're going to give you a life that's preferable to your old one. And then he joins the fraternity. The fraternity gets caught up in a big battle that Wesley gets caught in the middle of. So he doesn't really have a choice, he just has to deal with things. Then he gets to the end, and before I reveal the ending, I'll let you know before I do it. Okay, this is not the moment that I'm going to say that. Essentially everything is just dumped in his lap. He doesn't make choices that affects the course of action. He is just a player. Sure, he's really effective at killing things, and he does kill a lot of the bad guys, and he does deal with a lot of the problems. Deal with them, I think, is a loose way of putting it. But he manages to affect his own destiny in that the fact that he doesn't die. But that is not necessarily proactive. That's just self-preservation, and the fact that he's killing other people, that's almost like muscle memory now, because they trained him to do it. Oh, I don't like those people, I'm going to kill them, and that's the only logic that he has throughout this whole thing. It's about being a victimizer rather than being a victim. So, in that, we don't really get any characterization. He becomes just snarky. He becomes rude. He becomes angry. Well, not necessarily angry. He becomes a thrill killer, and that's the only significant thing about him. After he becomes a villain, that's the only significant thing about him, is that he kills people, and that he satisfies urges, whether it be sexual or power or be whatever else. It is strictly about victimizing. He has no other character traits than just being cruel. And I think his cruelty and his snarkiness are supposed to be an attempt at dark humor, but they're not funny to me. They don't come off very well. It's just... Now, that's not to say that I don't appreciate dark humor. I mean, of course, I said in the video where I reviewed the first one that I like things like The Boys and Preacher, and I just don't like things that are disgusting for no reason. Yeah, essentially, since there's no strong attempt at characterization, we have a few weak attempts at characterization, and I mentioned those earlier. He suddenly develops this sense of morals, so he decides he's not going to kill the cop. That's trying to... For me, that seems like a late attempt at trying to make him sympathetic. It seems like, well, I have made this character who's completely unsympathetic. I need to have some sort of humanity within this man. Too little, too late. By the time we get to it, it is completely... We never come back to it, and there's really no build-up to it. So therefore, it is completely unrelated to anything else, and therefore a weak attempt at adding some sort of humanity to this man. His self-doubt, his self-doubt is just a way for his early life to bleed in upon his current life, because he hit the ground running. When they said, "You want to be a supervillain?" he said, "Yes, please." Well, except that's not... The first issue was about, I don't know, maybe I will, kinda, sorta. And then he hits the second issue, and bam, he is a supervillain for life. And that's exactly where it goes. So when he doubts himself later, it's sort of in place of an opportunity for change. It's like they're saying, we have created something that is so uncharacter-driven, we've created something that's so plot-driven that he doesn't even have an opportunity to change now. His opportunity for change came in the first issue. That started... The thing about it is that his opportunity for change is just being given a pot of gold. So he doesn't really have an opportunity for change, because... when you look at a structure of a story, what that is the first plot point. He is given the chance to change, or we have something happen to him that changes the course of the status quo. So that is not really an opportunity for change, that is the first plot point. That's a plot point, and that is the first plot point. The inciting incident would really be the fox walking into his life. So, moving on to the scene we were talking about, his self-doubt seems like because it happens near the end of the book, where he's doubting himself as to whether or not he is as effective as he has been trained to be. And what that really says about him in this moment, well, it feels like they're trying to insert something in lieu of a moment of change. Because there is none, he has no moment of change, he is just given the task to kill. That's it. What's the grossest thing that a person can possibly come up with? Rape. Okay, so he rapes people. What's the grossest thing a person could possibly come up with? Rape and kill. Okay, so he rapes and kills. What's the grossest way that a person could possibly behave? It's largely about profanity and being rude and being snarky and being kind of a jerk to everybody. I cannot support that characterization. It's not unique enough. if you want to shock me, you can't use the normal things that people do to shock somebody. So, as I said, the inhumanity is too commonplace to be inhumanity. They're supervillains. Be a little theatrical. Be a little creative. As I said in the first video, and I'll say it again, the profanity makes everybody sound ignorant. There are some comical attempts at profanity, but calling somebody a cheese insert genital here is not necessarily something that I would call funny. Since there's so much profanity in there, the little attempts at quirky profanity I thought seemed sort of out of place and well, let me rephrase it. It seems expected. It seems like clever things are unexpected. There's so much profanity that I cannot really jump on board and allow the profanity to be fun and funny. Now, that being said, there are some moments within the profanity that are really funny. There's a character who points up and says, "Look, up in the sky!" And then another person in the panel says, well, the F word, but he's like, "Ah!" So, it's really funny to me. But having read so much profanity back to back, right before that and directly after that, and throughout the duration of the piece, it took away the effect of that line. And there's a couple of characters in here. The character who is parodying Bizarro, the character who is parodying Clayface, they have... since they have such profane names, those would be funny if they weren't in the immediate vicinity of astounding amounts of profanity. In fact, there are moments in this that I thought the characters' names were, since they're profane names, I thought they were just calling somebody a name. And I had to stop and think, oh, wait, that's a character's name. I get it. And later on, they even make fun of the character's name being profane. So... we'll say that the Bizarro, his name is F-Wit, because of course I'm not going to say the actual name on here, but so they say F-Wit, and the guy says, "Hey, yeah, that's not nice." No, I'm not talking about you, dump dipwad. You can't say that stuff either. I'm talking about F-Wit. So those characters' names, the comedy inherent in those characters' names, have been sort of taken away. So Millar undershoots his own ability to be funny by being disgusting. I said in the first video that every character is extremely masculine. Now that's sort of significant considering that every character, or that men and women, villains, belong to the fraternity, the brotherhood. So I feel like the dialogue is extremely masculine. I feel like the dialogue is extremely aggressive. And that's not to say that you cannot have an aggressive woman. That's not to say that you cannot have a powerful woman. I'm just saying that I feel like every character is written to be the stereotypical gangbanger guy. Which, there is one really interesting character in here. The professor, whose name I forget, but I'll find it very quick because he's in the dossier. The professor... Come on, dossier. Where's my trusted professor? He's right here. The professor's really interesting because Professor Solomon Seltzer, because he, well, the Professor Solomon Seltzer and one of the Council of Five, Mr. Rictus, are really interesting characters because they stand out among the rest. They don't seem like the common thug. And the trouble with Rictus is the only reason he doesn't seem like the common thug is because he doesn't use as much profanity as everybody else. The Professor, he's interesting because he has goals that are not the same goals as everybody else. He is calculated. He knows how to run the world. And we have Mr. Rictus, who is just a loose cannon who is part of the Council of Five just because he's powerful. I find him uninteresting and interesting at the same time. I find the fact that he doesn't use profanity to be interesting. It calls attention to him. Well, he does use profanity, but he doesn't use it as much as everybody else. So it calls attention to him, and I find that interesting. But everything we learn about him is really he's just a despicable guy who wants to have free reign to do what he wants. That's not interesting. Okay. Here is the ending of the piece. So if you don't want to know what happens at the end of Wanted, please stop watching. But here's my assessment of the end of end of Wanted. Did I say Watchmen? Anyway, at the end of Wanted, the father turns out that he's not dead. He has left he has convinced everybody that he is dead in order to pull his son into the fraternity and get him trained to be an effective villain. And it has nothing to do with any of the other characters. Now, they've set this up a little bit for us to believe that he's still alive, and I'm in support of how he set him up. They kept having this question of who actually killed the father, and everybody denies it. And they deny it so vehemently that it does lead up to the father being alive. But the father's living, or the fact that the father's alive has nothing to do with the rest of the story. The involvement of Wesley in the actual operations of the fraternity had nothing to do with the father. The father only wanted him to be trained by the fraternity. So Wesley the father had nothing to do with the events that are going on within the fraternity. The father had nothing to do with the events that Mr. Rictus, that's hard to say, Mr. Rictus betraying the fraternity, along with the other gentleman whose name I have forgotten. I think the Future is what they called him. So we have the original killer has nothing to do with the internal turmoil, with the civil war that is going on within the fraternity. He just shows up at the end of this battle and says, "I need to talk to you, Wesley. I am the one who wanted you to be trained." And the fox says, yes, I was also in on this. It was just your father and I who knew about this. It's not linked into the rest of the story. It's not organic. It's something that happens outside. It's not a way to cap off the ending. That's just something that said, okay, now that I've really told a story about with all the horrible things that I could think of, commonplaces they may be, now I need to add something onto this so that maybe even this is in lieu of character development. Maybe this is even in lieu of the moment of change, because that's the thing. A moment of change doesn't necessarily need to occur, but an opportunity for change does. So the father says to the son, "I want you to be the one that kills me. I'm getting old. I'm getting ineffective, and I don't want to just flame out. I don't want some undeserving peon to kill me. I want my son, I want somebody effective and trained and able to be the one that snuffs me out." Fine. It has to link up to the rest of the story. Now, the son is given the opportunity to kill his father. Does he? I'm going to tell you right now, yes he does. He kills the father. And maybe that is an opportunity for change, but really it's not, because he's already made his decision all the way through, and since this is not connected to the rest of the story, this isn't even connected to his journey within the fraternity. The father wants Wesley to kill him. Wesley has to overcome his heartlessness now and decide that he's going to do something for his father. But he's good at killing things. That's what he likes to do. He tells his dad that he loves him right before he kills him. Why? The man has been absent from Wesley's life the entirety of his existence. Why is Wesley has not been aware of his father's presence the entire time? Why does he harbor so much love for his father? I don't buy it. And maybe he's just acting, because directly after that he says something to the fox where he says, "Well, I'm tired of this life. I'm going to go back to being a peon and just somebody that people don't respect." And the fox says, "Really?" And he says, "No, I'm going to be evil. I love being evil." And I can't. This is something that is so expected, because one, he loves killing things. Two, he is trained to be a sexual and social deviant. So what would killing his father mean anything to him? Because directly after that, he doesn't even care that he just killed his father. So all I can really say is that it's fairly obvious that that scene makes no sense within the rest of the story. Sure, maybe it would have made some sense had he had a different journey, had the father had some play within the actual involvement, or within the Civil War of the fraternity, but it has nothing to do with Wesley's journey. So essentially, having really torn through all of these notes and tried to review this book, I have to say, one, it's not character driven. I don't like it. That for me, a good story is sophisticated storytelling. And there's some cool action in here. There's really good art. There's some fun superpowers, but the story is really absent. It's just things happening on a page. And I'm going to catch some flack for reviewing this book and hating it so much, but I can't even apologize. I really feel like there is very little literary merit to this. If you enjoy it, that's fine. It's okay to enjoy things that are more about a sensory experience than they are about telling a cohesive and coherent story. I'm not saying that you can't enjoy this book. Feel free. There are plenty of people on the back who have said things in praise of this book, so I'm not going to say that you cannot enjoy it. That is fine. Please feel free. And if you leave a comment, I have said this, so please be aware. You are allowed to like something that is about extravagance. You are allowed to like something that is about the theater of attraction is what they call it. Theater of attraction. Something that is just about something that is astoundingly either awful or impressive. It doesn't have to have a story. That's okay. But this, since it exists within a story medium and I'm reviewing it as something that is intended to be seen as a story, I don't think it's good. In fact, it's not sophisticated storytelling, and that's usually how I call something, when I call something good. I'll call it good for being fun or good for being sophisticated. I don't think it's fun. I don't think it's sophisticated. So, thanks for watching the Comic Vault, guys. Let the hate mail start. You can also donate things to the Comic Vault, vast and ominous as it may be. And in order to do that, you go to Geekvolution, P.O. Box 14183, Lenexa, Kansas, 66285. Alrighty, you guys can send us anything that you like, anything at all. Comics, movies. Please don't send us anything that'll mold. So, anyway, thanks for watching the Comic Vault, guys. I'm Vince. This is Geekvolution. We'll catch you next time.